Hello, everyone. I apologize. I didn't turn my microphone on. I plugged it in and I didn't turn it on. So I will choose. Maybe somebody can just let me know if you can hear me now, but I'm sure you should be able to hear me now. So we have Eileen. Hi, Eileen. And thank you so much for telling me you didn't hear me. Eileen's a longtime friend of mine. Thank you so much for watching. And Jenna Rotella, she's a subscriber on YouTube. And yeah, hi, Jenna. It's so nice to see you here. And she's a big fan, and she leaves me lots of very interesting comments. We have very interesting conversations. So I really appreciate that you're here as well, Jenna. Yeah, New York State. She's got a lot of snow, just like us. So let me just go back and do a really brief review because you couldn't hear me. And okay, you can hear me now. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for confirming. So I'm just going to go back very briefly. I know you were able to see the information. That's not what I want to do. But I'll just go back very briefly so you can hear what I said. Here we go. So I'm going to just quickly go back to the U.S. So in the U.S., what I said basically was there was a number of recalls for undeclared allergens. That's all this stuff in blue. And there were a couple of recalls either from the FDA or the USDA for meat that was either not inspected or not produced under the correct regulatory oversight. And then there were quite a few recalls for mostly Listeria and also Cyclospora. So these are all a pathogen that can make you very sick. And the increase in the number of recalls for Listeria is not a good thing. Now, 2 of them are with the same company that produces Mexican food products. And one of them is for taco products. And it may be that these taco products came from El Abuelito or maybe not. I don't know that. But they may be related or not. So we can see that basically the number of recalls in February went down because it was 20 or 21 in January for the United States. And but the number of recalls for bacteria went up. So that's not a good thing. And then if we look at the situation in Canada, we had a few for spoilage and leaking cans. Food coloring, because it's either not allowed or it was not within the limits required by the government. Glass pieces, and this company, I know they package in glass, so that's how it happened, but that doesn't make it right because companies are supposed to have adequate controls in place so that we don't have glass in our food when we buy it. And then we have some undeclared allergens here in these various products. And all countries will have rules on what allergens are allowed in what allergens must be declared on the label. And the USA and Canada and most countries in the world, it doesn't matter where the food is produced. If it's going to be sold in that country, it must have the correct allergens declared on the label for that country. So there's quite a few allergen recalls, and that generally now is about most recalls. Over half the recalls now are related to undeclared allergens. And then 1 recall also for Listeria, which is not good. Now, what I did say about this is that I just wrote wild sockeye salmon. So this information I'm sharing with you is a summary. And if you want to actually know which production dates and which lot numbers of wild sockeye salmon or these Mexican products or any products that are in a recall, you actually have to go to my Facebook page where I post the recall notices, or go to the USDA and the FDA for the USA and the CFIA for Canada to actually find out all the details on which lot numbers of sockeye salmon were recalled, because it will only be a small part. And so you might find wild sockeye salmon by One Ocean in your grocery store, and you're going to wonder, was this the product recalled? Well, any of the recalled products should be off the shelves of the grocery store, and if it's still there, it's because it's a production date that's not part of the recall. And the situation in February for Canada is also better than January. However, we'll see if that's a trend that continues or not. So I'm so sorry that you couldn't hear me before. Yes, it's a learning experience doing these live streams. So What can I say? Learn from your mistakes. Well, actually, I'm going to get there, Jenna. Yeah, Jenna asked, could it be due to the soil and how the farming is going? So I'm going to get there. I have some information to share with you. So I thought first I would just talk for a minute about some of the enforcement reports from the FDA, because these don't necessarily show up in the recall notices. So here we have Barron County Organics, and they make ice cream and, products like that. And they produced a bunch of different products in early February because they missed the pasteurization step after blending. So they had they chose voluntary withdrawal means the company chooses to withdraw the products. And then Peril Farms also had a voluntary withdrawal of butternut squash products because of Listeria. And there was a bunch of Listeria recalls in January for butternut squash. So they could be related. Who knows? We'll find out more. Sometimes it takes the FDA a long time to produce the final report, but eventually we should find out more. Yeah. So we've got this thing going on right now of Listeria recalls. Let me go back. Of Listeria recalls in January and February. And I just wanted to show you this history from the CDC of Listeria recalls, multi-state. So here we just heard about this one, 2020, mushrooms and deli meats, 2019, hard-boiled eggs, deli sliced meats and cheeses, 2018, pork products, deli ham, 2017, creamery soft raw milk, 2016, frozen vegetables, raw milk, packaged salad. So every year there's a sequence of Listeria recalls that happen. And I'm going to share my screen with you. Yeah, and Listeria is very serious. It has a 20% death rate. It is the third most deadly pathogen out there. Botulism is the most deadly, and Listeria is the third. So it's not something to take lightly. If you hear about a Listeria recall, you really do want to pay attention that you don't have the product in your house. Also, okay, I'm going to, so we're going to get to your question, Jenna. I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to just, here we go, share my screen again. So Listeria, it kills 1 in 5 people. It's very dangerous for kids and elderly people and pregnant women because it can cause miscarriage, early labor, low birth weight, and or infant death. And most people, most people require hospitalization with Listeria. So it's really something to take very seriously. And why is it happening? Well, that's what we're going to get to. So Listeria is everywhere. It's in the soil, it's in the water, and so it will be all over the farm, for example. So if you're growing vegetables in a farm and fruit, Listeria can be on the vegetables and the fruit that come to into the food process chain. Now, if it's a tree nut or an apple, something that grows on a tree, if you harvest from the tree like you're supposed to for human consumption, apples, almonds, nuts, anything that grows in a tree is supposed to be harvested from the tree. So things that drop on the ground, they can go for juice, which will be pasteurized. They can go for apple sauce or nut butter, which will be pasteurized or given a heat treatment to kill the Listeria. But for apples and nuts and things that are just going to be eaten in their raw state, they should always come from the tree picking and not from the dropped stuff on the ground. And Listeria is one of the reasons why. And Listeria will live for a long time in the outside environment. And once it gets into a food plant, it can live for a long time in the food plant. And Listeria commonly lives in drains. There's several kinds of Listeria, and they're not all going to make us sick. But the kind of Listeria, which is called Listeria monocytogenes, which can make us sick, very often will be found in drains and wet environments. And from there, if it gets into a food plant drain and wet environment, it can then move into the equipment, and then it can get into the food. So, and food plants are supposed to be doing testing of their food plant environment to check for Listeria, to check for Salmonella, to check for E. coli, so that if they do have it in their environment, they'll find it. But some food plants are better at this than others. The smaller companies may struggle more with trying to figure out, what they should test, where they should test. Testing is expensive, but it's supposed to be done. So another thing that makes Listeria very difficult to deal with is most bacteria at refrigeration temperatures, they're either killed or they don't grow. Listeria, not only is it not killed, it can still multiply at refrigeration temperatures. So even if you put the food in the fridge, the Listeria will still grow. And Listeria is relatively tolerant of acidic and salty environments. And acidic environments like pickles and salty environments like, pickles as well, are used to prevent pathogen growth in some of our foods. But Listeria is more tolerant than most bacteria, so it's a hard bacteria to get rid of because it is fairly adaptable, and it can, grow for a long time and persist for a long time and survive in what are generally considered difficult environments for most bacteria. And Listeria prefers moisture, which is why you can often find it in drains, but it can tolerate lower moisture foods as well. So that means that it's just a really hard bacteria to deal with. And if the farm doesn't have good controls on cleaning their food before it goes into the processing chain, or if they have these things called pack houses, and very often products will go from the farm to the pack house, and in the pack house they may just pack it, but if it's food that grows on the ground, in the ground, or near the ground, it's also supposed to be washed before it gets packed. So if their process isn't good, then if there is Listeria, it might not be killed. And then if it gets into another food plant where they're working with, the foods that came from the farm to the pack house, to like the butternut squash, it maybe went from the farm straight to a big company, or it may have gone from the farm to a pack house and then to a smaller company. And if it still had Listeria on it, and if that butternut squash was chopped and peeled and not given an adequate heat treatment or an adequate cleaning treatment, then there could still be Listeria in that butternut squash. And then even if it's frozen, it's not going to kill the bacteria. Now, freezing will stop Listeria from growing, but it won't necessarily kill it. So then it gets to your house, and if you don't cook it enough, then you can get sick. So that's really what happens. Is it's a breakdown somewhere in the process. The controls are adequate, but sometimes people, for whatever reason, don't apply all the controls properly, or mistakes happen, or employees have a bad day, or they're rushing, or, there's a lot of different reasons. But so it's not the soil, because Listeria will be everywhere, but it could be, like everybody is under pressure to produce food right now. I mean, food companies are always under pressure to produce food because they have to make a profit or they go out of business. But right now, with the pandemic, it's harder to get workers to work in food plants and on farms. And yet farmers and food production companies still need to produce food so we can eat. So they're under a lot more pressure now because of the pandemic than in the past. So that's also, I think, part of the situation. I don't know if you guys have any more questions about recalls, but that's kind of the situation in February. And like I said, I post the recall notices to my Facebook page, Kitchen Sense and Information, for the USA and for Canada as they happen. And then once a month, I do this review of the food recalls and a little bit about maybe why they happened or answer your questions. And so I have a Facebook page. That's what Eileen is watching from. And I also have a YouTube channel called Debbie Esplin, and that's what Jen is watching from. And I stream to these two places. So if you're not already subscribed to me and you watch this in the replay, let me know. If you're not already subscribed to me and you watch this on YouTube, then subscribe to my channel. And if you have comments or questions, let me know. I answer my comments every day. I did have gum surgery, not gum surgery. I had dental surgery last week. So I was, for a couple of days, I was out of action, but things are going pretty good now. And I hope you find this interesting. So let me know in the comments and share this with your friends if you want to. And New York is bad. Oh, really? Is it bad for snow or is it bad for recalls? I don't know. What is New York bad for, Jenna? Let me know. I'm curious now. You got my curiosity piqued. And if you want to know more about the recalls, you can always go to my Facebook page and check them out as the month goes on. I also have a newsletter, and in my newsletter, I share information about food. Every 2 weeks, I produce it, and I choose a topic related to food, and I I share information in my newsletter that I don't share on YouTube and I don't share on Facebook. It's like fun facts and information. And so the latest issue was all about crustaceans. And I actually, in doing the research, I learned a lot and it was really interesting. So if you want to know more about food, then sign up for my newsletter. And the link is also going to be in the Facebook page and in the video description for this video on YouTube. Oh, recalls. New York is bad for recalls. Yeah, well, you have a fair amount of farming in New York and you have a fair amount of food producers, and you also have a really big population. So recalls are also not completely, but somewhat related to the population of a place. So, maybe a state with 100,000 people compared to a state with 50 million, the recall situation will be different. And, I see we have Edilen from Brazil. Hello. How are you? Thank you for visiting from Brazil to my channel. So I'm pretty much finished sharing everything I wanted to share with you guys. If you have any questions before we go, I will be back with my report for March, and I'm going to switch it to Saturdays now. So it's going to be the first Saturday in March, which is going to be March 3rd. So come back on March 3rd at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will do an overview of the recalls that happened in Canada and in the USA for March. I'm just going to speak French for a few minutes for the Canadian recalls. So let me just do a very quick review of that in French for my French-speaking friends here in Quebec. Here we go. Donc, voici la situation pour les rappels au Canada. Donc, il y en avait quelques-unes pour la moisissure ou les problèmes avec l'embouteillage. Il y avait les morceaux de glace aussi. Ça, c'est une compagnie qui met ses produits dans le verre. Donc, c'est pour ça, mais quand même, les compagnies devraient avoir assez de contrôle pour ne pas avoir les morceaux de verre dans le produit. Il y avait aussi plusieurs rappels pour les allergènes non déclarés dans les produits ici, dans le bleu. Et il y avait un rappel pour la listériose dans le saumon, dans une canne. Donc, si vous voulez voir les détails sur tous ces rappels, vous pouvez trouver ça sur mon page Facebook, Kitchen Sense and Information, ou vous pouvez aller sur le site de l'ACIA. Et là, vous allez trouver tous les détails pour les rappels qui se fait au Canada. Dans le total ici, pour le mois de février 2021, c'était 15 rappels. Donc, c'est une diminution en comparaison avec le mois de janvier. Mais on ne sait pas si la tendance va continuer ou non. Donc, voici la situation des rappels au Canada pour le mois de février 2021. Yes, I know, Jenna. I heard about that. It's really bad. Their water situation is really bad. I actually wanted to do a video eventually on some of the places in North America where the water situation is really bad. And it's people are so dependent on having good, clean, healthy water to drink. And in North America, we take it for granted. But believe it or not, there are places in North America where people do not have safe, good quality drinking water. And the Love Canal is one of them. And if you want to know more, check it out. But eventually I will take a look at some of the places in North America where people do not have safe water to drink. Yeah, so thank you for telling us about that. Well, Eddie Len, you can watch the replay. So don't worry. I know you came in the last few minutes, but you can watch the replay. And I really appreciate you popping in and saying hello. So everybody, I hope you have a good rest of your day. And I will be coming out with a recipe tomorrow. So check my channel for that and more stuff coming. I'm going to talk about gluten on Saturday and gluten-free foods. So I hope to see you in those videos. Everybody take care. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for commenting. And if you're watching the replay, thanks so much for commenting and watching and subscribing if you subscribe. I love it when I get a chance to talk to people through the comments and live like this, live comments. It's just wonderful. Thanks so much. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.